touch one of mine and you're done. They show no love for the queen. Why you hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans? I got dreams like King Luther, shed blood like Kunsa. You ain't helping my people, I ain't got nothing to say to ya. I want all the smoke like hookah. Talking reparations. America won't be great until they give us compensation. I'm like, I'm the hottest right now. See a bunch of lames out here trying to jock on my style. They be doing too much. I'm the queen, it's too easy. It's like they all in Popeyes, how they be talking so greasy. I just sit back and laugh while these haters get madder. So nefarious how they don't roll my pockets with cheddar. I tell them they can do better. These snakes in the grass can leave a bite on your ass, cause y'all be trusting too fast. I got my foot on the gas, other one on they necks. Dropping receipts on haters, you better show some respect. I'm never facing regrets, we only facing the threat.
This is the sound of Eric Malcolm.
It's a cut on the gas, other one on they necks. Dropping receipts on haters, you better show some respect. I'm never facing regrets, we only facing the threat. Running through every challenge like a relay, break no sweat. It's a cold game, so I got that blanket with me. Now that my people awaken, ain't no going to sleep. I do not play by my piece, this time I'm playing for keeps. You talking straight, but when I see you like them ends we gon' be. And I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you're done. They show no love for the queen, why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans, and I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you're done. They show no love for the queen, why they hating on me?
Nobody knows why liars lie. Winners are not allowed to allow losers to rewrite history. It's God's side and the other side. Country bumpkin black dude that can't talk good, Uber cabbage, and look like Mr. Potato Head.
I didn't want to be a movie star.
No, you couldn't be a movie star. Ricky Smiley can't act, cause Ricky Smiley can't act. Why is he in a dress again? He didn't be wanting to Barbie, and you gotta tell him no. Sid ain't got no special, you remember? Eve ain't got no special, you remember? Ricky ain't got no special, you remember? Sir, I have 12 comedy specials. P. Diddy or whoever you is, TVJ, 20 of them. I won't stop burning you down until there ain't nothing left. Rubble on top of rubble, and I'll still be bombing. Look like a wall, Richard. Look like a wall. You didn't say no. Look like a wall, Richard. Look like a wall. You didn't say no.
All right. Hello, everyone. Grand Rising. Thanks for tuning back in once again to the original Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur show. I'm your host, Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur, and this is your morning wake-up call. I'm going to tell you guys a little secret. When the intro stops and then I play Cat Williams, it's usually because I'm still making my coffee. Okay, so please pay attention. Now, with that all being said, let's see who is in here. All right, my Aunt Egypt is here. Aqua Girl Rising and Vision for You. Nicole is here. Claudette. Fusion is here. All right, let's get into it. Mr. Fat Arafats. All right. Nita's in Mike's World. All right. 504 Nola is in the house. DJ Big Six. Andrew is here. All the way from the land down under. Anita Harrell is in the house. Pretty Wings. Hero Conscious is here. All right. With that all been said, let's get into it. Lorraine, I see you. Only one. Adriana is here. All right. Desmond, Fatima. Shout out to all of my loyal warriors. Y'all know I love me some you. Didi and Dallas is in the house. All right. Alvin. And shout out to my moderators because they be putting in work. Okay. I see you, Nina Star. All right. With that all being said, let's have a brief word from my sponsor at 12 Tribes before we get into it.
Do not buy 12 Tribes on Earth hair growth oil and hair magic elixir unless you want super healthy, gorgeous hair that grows. They have a whole line of amazing hair growth products, including hair growth leave-in conditioner spray, hair growth shampoo, hair growth spray, and hair growth butter. I'm starting to sense a theme here. They include quality natural ingredients. They smell amazing, and you can see the results for yourself. So if you're looking for healthy hair growth for your natural or relaxed hair, try 12 Tribes on Earth today.
All right, so don't forget you can purchase 12 Tribes Hair Oil at Etsy.com. Just look for Lisa Crafts. You can also find it at Walmart.com. And please don't forget about the beard oil that she has for the men. Okay, so let's get into it. All right. Nicole said, enter the class quietly this Monday morning. I'm door security. I know that's right, beloved. Okay, so let's get into it because it is a lot going on. It is a lot going on, you guys. First of all, yesterday, Gina Hunn wrote a letter to the judge, okay, about Diddy, asking for him to be given a bail, saying that he's not a danger to society as far as she's concerned. Now, I started to come back and report that, and I said, you know what? I don't feel like it. I'll tell him about it tomorrow. Okay, that's what I said, y'all, because I was here fixing my dinner. Okay, so now let's talk about it. Let's get into it. Everybody hit that like button. Thank you. It's the least you can do. Okay, y'all know the queen be out here doing work. So now listen to this. Diddy's ex-girlfriend writes a letter to judge in support of bail before sentencing. Says, I do not view Mr. Combs as a danger. All right, now this is Gina. Remember, she was victim 3 who never showed up for trial. Okay, she never showed up to testify. Well, she's written this letter to the judge presiding over his federal case in support, excuse me, of his release on bail before his sentencing in October. Now, here's the thing. Remember how I told you guys, I said, listen, Diddy has only 2 months before his sentencing. And so really, even if he doesn't get bail, it won't be anything drastic because he's only got 2 months and he's going to get time served. So that all being said, here's the thing. It does make sense that he would want bail because when you hear about the filthy, deplorable conditions at the MDC, well, you know, I guess I could see why he wants to get out of there. We'll get into that in a minute. And I've told you all this stuff before, but there's some more information in this letter that I'm going to read from the defense. Absolutely deplorable conditions. So, you know, I wouldn't want to be there for 2 days, let alone 2 more months. Okay, so I absolutely get it. And, you know, usually it's people who haven't been to jail ever who don't see why somebody wants to get the hell out. Okay, please pay attention. Please pay attention. D Major Scaling, please stay focused on the topic. Stop talking about Gina's breastises, talking about nice hooters. Okay, that's not why we're here. Okay, stay on track, beloved. Focus. Okay, so here's what she says. Hunn was referenced several times in the government's indictment of Combs. Though she never ended up testifying in his trial, Hunn's note was included in a letter sent on Sunday by Combs' legal team, who claimed that the government argued that Combs was violent towards Gina Hunn. Now, or Virginia is her actual name. So she wrote that he has not been violent for many years, and he has been committed to being a father first. Well, that's not true. He was violent with Jane Doe. I believe it was 2024. Isn't that what Jane Doe testified to? So that's not many years. Gina may not know about that if she wasn't following the trial. She says, I'm writing because I do not view Mr. Combs as a danger to me or the community. This is his first criminal case. This isn't his first criminal case either. She should have said his first criminal conviction because Diddy has had several criminal cases. The shooting in 1999, the City College incident, okay, when he hit that coach with a kettlebell. He's had a myriad of criminal cases, okay? She should have said his first criminal conviction. But I know what she's talking about, and so do y'all. Throughout the investigation and proceedings, he has been cooperative, respectful, and compliant. He has substantial ties to his family and community, including children who depend on him for emotional and financial support. Granting him bond would allow him to continue caring for his family and fulfilling his responsibilities while still subject to the court's supervision. She supported Combs' pre-sentencing release by assuring the court that he would adhere to all conditions imposed and will not jeopardize his freedom or the well-being of his family. She says, our relationship, like many, was not always perfect. We experienced ups and downs and mistakes were made, but he was willing to acknowledge his mistakes and make better decisions in the future. Over the years that followed, he made visible efforts to become a better person and to address the harm he had caused. By the time our relationship ended, he embodied an energy of love, patience, and gentleness that was markedly different from his past behavior. To my knowledge, he has not been violent for many years and has been committed to being a father first. In its indictment, the government accused Combs of using force, threats, fraud, and coercion to cause victims, including but not limited to 3 female victims, referred to as victims 1, 2, and 3, to engage in commercial S acts. In connection with the commercial S acts, Combs provided the victims with, among other things, monetary payments, career opportunities, and payments for rent and housing expenses. During Combs' trial, according to CNN, his former assistant, George Kaplan, testified that he once saw Combs throwing apples at Hunt in his Miami home. Do you all remember that? You all remember that? That's exactly what he said. I was sitting there when he said it, said he was throwing apples at her and she was ducking and dodging, basically. Okay, also testified that Combs was unfaithful to her by dating Gina, or Cassie, I'm sorry. A key witness in the case also testified Combs was unfaithful to her while dating Gina while they were together. Well, you know, Cassie, you were dating Diddy while he was with Kim, so you're no better than Gina. Okay, Combs is currently incarcerated while awaiting his sentencing set for October the 3rd on 2 counts of transportation for prostitution. His legal team has revived its attempts to get Combs out of prison before sentencing and has been engaged in a back and forth with the government, arguing over the eligibility for bail. Let me tell you all something. At the end of the day, this nice little letter that Gina wrote, I think it's going to come back to bite her in the arse. And here's why. Because she was a government witness who didn't show up. She was victim number 3. She didn't show up. And we know that the witnesses who were going to testify for the government, they were interviewed multiple times and they said things to the government which led them to believe, the government that is, that these will be viable witnesses that would help benefit their case. So with that being said, do you all think that what Gina just said in that letter is the same thing she told those prosecutors when she went for the proffer? And if you don't know what a proffer is, that's when you go and sit down and you talk to the prosecution and you're either going to testify or you're going to give them some information that they can use or whatever. But that's the agreement that you make. So when she did the proffer, do you think that she told the feds anything nice about Diddy? Like all this stuff that she's saying in the letter, he's not been violent for years. We had a relationship with ups and downs like everybody else. He's a gentle, kind, loving, patient person. He's trying to do better, etc., etc. She didn't tell them that. Had she told them that, they wouldn't have been asking her to be a witness. They wouldn't have listed her as a victim. So she had to tell them about any time that she's claiming that Diddy victimized her. She told them, I'm willing to bet whatever she said on that Tasha K interview. Those are the things that she told them about. Diddy stomping her in the stomach? Diddy beating her? Diddy doing X, Y, and Z? That's what she told them. Now, why does that even matter right now, Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur? Well, I'm so glad you asked, because here's why that matters. You see, the feds are going to use that to come back and discount her letter and discredit her letter and say that she's a liar who lies. They're going to say, young lady, that's not what you were saying at first. So why are you saying it now? And also, let me tell you what else they're going to do. They're going to bring the statements of everything that she said during the proffer. You're going to bring that to, or they're going to send that to the judge. I'm pretty sure, because after this scathing letter that just came from Diddy's team going in on the prosecution for filth, the prosecution's going to respond. And when they do, okay, when they do, they're going to bring up the stuff that Gina actually said in that proffer. Okay, you can best believe that. That's what they're going to do. And they're already upset that she never even showed up to testify to help their case. They may even be blaming it on her that they lost. Who knows? But this is not good. So let me just show you all why I know this to be true. I'm going to go back to some documentation that I read to you all just a couple of days ago. Okay, just a couple of days ago. And at first, when I read it, I really wasn't paying too much attention to it at first. And I'm like, what other evidence are they talking about that wasn't reviewed, wasn't revealed at trial? And then I said, are they talking about Gina? But yeah, they're definitely talking about Gina. So let's get into it. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. I'm about to share my screen. This is about to be a whole hot mess is all I'm saying. Now, y'all see this? I want you to pay attention because this right here is what I read to you the other day. Okay, so let's talk about it. I'm going to tell you what it says. Hold on, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I just want to read this portion right here above the redacted area. The defendant contends, now this is from the prosecution. The defendant contends that he does not pose a danger because the trial record does not reflect acts of violence, but the defendant between 2008, when he ended his relationship with Ms. Ventura, and 2024, when he viciously assaulted Jane. So see how that makes no sense? Because Gina is saying that for many years, he hasn't been violent. For many years, he hasn't been violent, but broke up with Cassie in 2018, was with Jane Doe, and then assaulted her in 2024. Not to mention, Gina Hunn did that interview with Tasha K in 2019. So when was the violence to her? That wasn't that long ago either. That's what the prosecution is going to argue. Now, as an initial matter, the defendant's violent attack of Jane and his years-long proclivity towards violence against Ms. Ventura and others. Who's others? All the people that testified about witnessing Diddy's violence or Diddy being violent with them, those people, including Gina, even though she didn't testify, is more than sufficient to establish his dangerousness. But the defendant's suggestion that he went several years without inflicting violence on another person simply is not true. The defendant did, and they have did in italics. Please pay attention. That's to emphasize it, not all caps. The defendant did engage in several acts of violence between 2018 and 2024. And this part right here is all redacted. You know why that's redacted? Because that's what Gina said. That's what Gina said right here. How much you want to bet? This right here that you can't see, when they send this back to the judge, this is going to be uncovered. And I'm willing to bet you money, $1 to a dime, that this is what Gina told them about Diddy that made her victim 3, which is why they wanted her to testify. Now, right here underneath it, it says, although this evidence was not presented at trial. Why wasn't it presented at trial? Well, because Gina didn't show up. She didn't bother to show up. I want y'all to pay attention. Now, although this evidence was not presented at trial, the court is free to consider it in assessing the defendant's dangerousness. Okay, and then they reference the case of the United States versus LaFontaine, okay, from 2000. Y'all hear this? Now, what do y'all think this is? This is exactly what I said it is. Let me see if I can look this case up real quick. Like and share, everybody. Like and share. Hold on, give me just a second. I should have looked this up prior to coming on here, but alas. Okay, so let me see what this says about this case. Here it is. Here's what it says. It says government moved to revoke bail of defendant charged with mail fraud, healthcare fraud. Okay, we're going to skip all of that. Hold on. It says they're talking about the revocation of bail or the modification of bail. Okay, the hearing. And then they say statutory presumption that no set of conditions will ensure that defendant will not pose danger to community, which arises upon showing of a probable cause to believe that defendant committed felony while on release does not disappear once the defendant has produced some rebuttal evidence, but continues to be weighed along with other factors in deciding whether to revoke bail. So this person was actually out on bail and their bail was revoked because they did something they had no business doing, but they're using that as a reference because they're just letting you know that that person posed a danger and we shouldn't have let him out on bail, but they let him out on bail and then he did something felonious. And that's why they're saying we can't trust Diddy. Now, I'm not saying they can't trust Diddy. I'm just telling you guys, that's what they're saying. that, oh, you don't want to let him out on bail, Your Honor, because if you do, and then he turns around and does the same thing LaFontaine did in 2000, it's going to be on the court. Okay? I want you all to pay attention. But that's not even just it. Recognizing that proffers are permissible both in the bail determination and bail revocation context. Okay? And that's what happened with LaFontaine. There was a bail revocation, which means they revoked his bail because he did something that was not in compliance with the bail agreements. Okay, are y'all getting this? And recognizing that proffers are permissible in both bail determination and bail revocation. So they're saying, listen, this is what Gina, how you know this is what Gina said? It's because they're talking about a proffer. The proffer, like I told you guys, is when somebody, remember you heard this here first. A proffer is when you sit down with the government and you give them testimony, information, or what have you, and you're going to testify for them. But even if you don't testify, they can still use the proffer against you. And they can use it when they're determining your bail and even when they're revoking your bail. That's what they can do. So I'm telling you all right here and right now that Gina writing that letter is not going to do any bit of good. It's not going to do her any bit of good. And if the feds really wanted to, they could try to say that, oh, so are you lying? When you spoke to us and you said he did all this stuff to you, were you lying? Because now you're saying something different. So either you're lying now or you were lying then. Now, if she knows what's good, she better say she's lying now in that nice little letter she wrote. Because if she was lying then and they can prove it, well, you can go to jail for that. Lying to the feds? Yeah, you can go to jail for that. You can get prison time. Trust me when I tell you. So it would behoove her, okay, if it comes down to the wire, that she just say that, I was not being 100% honest in that letter that I wrote to the judge. Okay? So, and of course, this is all contingent upon whatever she actually told the feds. But what I believe she told the feds was the same stuff she said on Tasha K's channel when she did that interview. That's just my opinion. District of Columbia said Diddy's getting railroaded. Well, he pretty much is, because with this Mann Act, now some of you all may beg to differ, but with the Mann Act, he is being railroaded, in my opinion, because the reason being, he didn't transport those people for the purposes of prostitution. Okay? They were escorts, dancers. Now, they got there and had sex. Okay? So, anyway, with that all being said, let's continue, because I want to get to this letter. That they have written to the judge in regards to Diddy. Likes up, everyone, please. Like and share. Thank you in advance. I'm going to share the screen again. Okay, here we go. Now let's talk about this. Mark Agnifilo. Okay, now this was written on yesterday. Dear Judge Subramanian, Sean Combs, through his counsel, submits this brief letter in reply to the government's response to his motion for release on conditions pending sentencing. Impervious to the judge's verdict, the government proceeds as though Combs was not acquitted of trafficking and racketeering conspiracy, along with all of the racketeering acts with which he was charged and found not guilty. Hell bent on punishing him for being a user of prostitution services in a more draconian manner than anyone in U.S. history, the government continues to target him unfairly, just as it has done from the inception of this probably misplaced investigation. Do y'all hear this? Now, despite the jury's verdict, it continues to make factual statements that are plainly at odds with what 12 New Yorkers found and tried to keep Combs incarcerated, even though the jury rejected the serious charges that led to his pretrial detention in the first place. Specifically, the government argues that Combs, number one, has failed to meet the standard for reconsideration. Number two, does not show exceptional circumstances. And three, cannot reasonably show Combs' appearance in court or the safety of the community. For the reasons stated below, the government's arguments fail. They said they're using draconian laws or draconian methods, which means basically old nefarious tactics. Okay? So here's what they say. The court has ample authority to grant bail. The government first argues that Combs' bail application should be considered as a motion for reconsideration by the court. However, as the government acknowledges in a footnote, the Bail Reform Act is silent on when or if a district judge may consider his or her own detention order pending sentence. And then they reference United States versus Aletta. The government also concedes, as it must, that the court can reconsider its discussion under its inherent power to reconsider his own ruling. But all the cases cited by the government discuss bail pending appeal. And pursuant, this court may order that pending imposition or execution of sentence or pending appeal of conviction or sentence, a person be released. Thus, the court may revisit its bail determination at any time. This makes sense as courts routinely modify conditions of bail pending sentencing to allow for travel or many other circumstances, and the high standard of reconsideration is not considered. Accordingly, this court may consider this application without treating it as a motion for reconsideration. This is especially true given the exigencies of July the 2nd of 2025, where the jury reached a verdict in the morning and the parties were arguing bail several hours later the same day. Unlike a more traditional setting for motions where parties typically have days, if not weeks, to consider the facts. The law in their arguments, the events of July 2nd, were fast moving, and it was impossible for the parties to review the scores of Mann Act cases to fashion an appropriate argument for the court. For these reasons, we submit that the court has ample discretion to consider this application. Now, what he's talking about is, or what they're talking about is, on the day of the verdict, they told the judge, that is, told the prosecution and the defendants or the defense to go and find cases and bring them back to him. Okay? To help him render his decision. And so now they're basically saying, well, we didn't really have a lot of time to go through many cases because it was only the same day. It wasn't like we had days or weeks to consider the facts and to find arguments for the law or for the events. So basically, they're saying they didn't have enough time. And so this is why the judge should absolutely reconsider giving Diddy bail, because everything was moving too fast. Now, the government argues that Combs has failed to show the need to prevent a manifest injustice as required. The government claims the defense has already argued exceptional circumstances based on a comparison of this case to other Mann Act convictions, but that was a hurried application the day of the verdict based on a very quick review over the course of the day of other Mann Act cases. Now, that quick review yielded 4 cases, which counsel distinguished at the hearing. After distinguishing just these 4 cases, counsel argued that they provided a strong argument for a reasonable sentence in this case, and that counsel would try to get Combs' sentence as soon as possible. Now, with the benefit of further research, counsel has reviewed scores of cases from across the country and submits this renewed motion for bail, showing that exceptional circumstances exist to warrant release pending sentencing. Basically, they're saying, listen, we didn't have time to go through a lot of cases that day. We only had 4 cases. Now we've been through all these cases over the country. Now, with that all being said, I told you all days ago, Agnifilo said specifically that he had reviewed at least 100 cases. Okay, so that's a whole lot more than the 4 that they were privy to on July the 2nd. Now, for purposes of this application, we assume that the Mann Act requires detention post-verdict subject to exceptional circumstances. However, as shown in our original application of July the 29th of 2025, the statute has been reserved for instances where people, primarily women, are forced into prostitution, where children are lured or forced into prostitution, and where the defendant is motivated by profiting from the business of prostitution. Isn't that what I told you all? Didn't I tell you all that? I said when they don't give the person bail, I said when they give the person a maximum sentence, under the federal sentencing guidelines of 10 years for a Mann Act violation, or at the judge's discretion, give them even more. And then I referenced Pastor Shap, or Shap, when he was given 144 months, which is 12 years. I told you all when these things happen, it's only because they were either a repeat offender, or they were dealing with children, and they were making money from it. And I told y'all Diddy wasn't making any money. Diddy was the one spending the money. So it's not like he was running a prostitution ring. And then I referenced the people from the Emperor's Club VIP. And former Governor Spitzer as well, who was a John like Diddy, except he was having relations with the person he took. Diddy wasn't. And he wasn't even prosecuted for the Mann Act. So it's clearly racially biased. So even the few other cases where the defendant of a Mann Act prosecution was a user of prostitution services are completely different from the instant case. The defense's bail application cited Throwbridge, Steinbeck, and Tills, and I already read you all those cases because remember, I looked them up. That was days ago. As examples of Johns solely convicted of the Mann Act who all received bonds after their conviction. So why is Diddy not getting a bond? They got a bond. There's killers who get bonds. The government argues that those defendants were not as culpable as Combs, and that was a damn lie. They were worse than Diddy. I read to you what they did. They said that Steinbeck only had one occasion of transporting a victim across state lines. Defendant Trowbridge only had 2 occasions, and defendant Tills had 6. What the government ignores, however, is that the defendants were members of a group called the Jesters, who brought prostitutes across state lines to have sex for money with members of a group. Remember, I told you all of this. That's why it pays to do the research. I told you guys, these men are worse than Diddy. They had a whole private club, a secret organization. Now, where they were having these women to have relationships with multiple men within this organization, bringing these women as gifts to them, and then they were receiving money from these men, and taking some of the women's money to boot. So, who brought prostitutes across state lines to have sex for money with the members of the group as a common practice. And I told you all, if it was a common practice, there's no way that they only did it once, twice, or even 6 times. There's no telling how many times they did it. There's no telling how many times they did it. So, because it was something they did on a regular, it was the norm, not just the occasions indicted. And that's what I told you guys. I said the cases, the amounts of times they were convicted of it, that's just the times they got caught. Those are just the times they got caught for doing it. That they had information to prove that these are the times they did it, but they could have been doing it hundreds of times. Moreover, the victims for all 3 defendants were victims of trafficking. And I told you all that too. They could hardly speak English and were undocumented immigrants who were tricked and coerced to work as prostitutes by a defendant in a related case who profited from their forced labor. It cannot possibly be that patronizing sex trafficked undocumented victims is less culpable than the conduct here, where these alleged victims were adult American men who chose to participate in the sexual activity, got paid thousands of dollars, and considered themselves friends of Combs and his girlfriends. Notably, and they're talking about the escorts. They're talking about the escorts, saying they're not the same as what was going on there in that situation with Tills and Steinbeck and all of them. Notably, regarding Steinbeck, the defendant was a member of the Jesters, and yet the government argued that the defendant did not even have sex with the victim. They said that's what the government argued. That's what the government argued. Why is that important? Because now the government's arguing the opposite when it comes to Diddy. And we can tell by the last name Stebic that person don't look like me or Diddy. Okay, please pay attention. Again, racial bias. Similarly, Combs did not have sex with the men here. And I told you all that too. I brought that up, that was a very valid point that should be taken into consideration. The government brushes over Collins, where the defendant was released following a mistrial on trafficking counts, then tried for violating the Mann Act, was convicted, and allowed to remain on bond pending sentencing. Collins's conduct was far more egregious, as the victim called 911, stating she was being held against her will. This shows that Combs continued detention pending sentencing despite his acquittal on the charges that actually involved true violence, unlike the Mann Act counts. It's unwarranted and extraordinary, and these are exceptional circumstances warranting his release. Well, I have to agree with the defense. But let's not forget the feds have a trick up their sleeve, and it's going to come to their proffer statement that they're going to show from Gina. What's the judge going to say about it? So anyway, the government also cites United States versus Bloomer from 1992, which it claims shows the present circumstances are not exceptional. In Bloomer, however, the defendant's exceptional reasons were solely family circumstances, which the court found was not enough to qualify as exceptional. In so finding, the court in Bloomer held that to qualify as exceptional, the reasons put forward by the defendant need not present an absolute legal novelty. An unusual legal or factual question can be sufficient, as can a substantial question in the presence of one or more remarkable and uncommon factors. That is exactly what we have here. Combs' conviction on these Mann Act counts, as well as the unusual legal application of the facts, are indeed sufficient to qualify as exceptional circumstances. The government argues that Chavez is no longer persuasive authority for this court because Chavez was published over 8 months before Combs stepped foot in the MDC. The government, however, ignores the reality at MDC. The case in Chavez, which counsel cited, that described the conditions there and paints a misguided picture of the court, or for the court, of the reality of the conditions at the facility. Now, let me just remind you all of that. So when they cited the case of Chavez and they said, well, that's not going to apply to Diddy because this was before he even got there 8 months prior. And then they say that the conditions have improved. Okay, there's more staff there. You know, they were saying it's safer and all of that. But you know how you know they're lying? Because here's how you know they're lying. Because if it was so safe there and everything had been fixed up and so better after Chavez, why in the hell? I want y'all to pay attention. Because I pay attention to detail, because that's where the devil always is. It's in the details. Do you all remember when they had federal multiple agents come to the MDC? Remember when they had multiple agents come to the MDC? You guys remember that? One's in the chat. One's in the chat if you remember that. I went over it thoroughly. And I told you that they were not there for what they said. They were there for Diddy. And that's when they found Diddy's notes from his attorneys. Do you all remember that? And I brought this up again to you all just days ago. One's in the chat if you all remember this. So here's the thing. Here's why you know this is all BS about the conditions improving after Chavez. Because when those multiple agencies came there, why did they claim they came again? See, this is how you know they were lying in the first place. I told y'all they were lying. But see, that lie is going to come back to bite them. Because here's why. They said that the multiple agencies came there because of the conditions there at the jail. They said because there was a lot of contraband being smuggled in. They said because inmates were turning up dead. But now they want to act like the conditions are better and that Diddy has no reason to be concerned. Y'all remember that? Okay, now, with that all being said, he said they paint a misguided picture for the court of the reality of the conditions at the facility. Indeed, they do. We continue to be grateful. And here's another thing. Remember how I told you they tried to use Agnifalo's words against him again by saying that Agnifalo was praising the jail and saying they were doing good and this and that. Agnifalo basically said he appreciated them. They were twisting the narrative, the feds that is, because Agnifilo was basically saying that he appreciated the fact that the jail allowed the attorneys to have access to their clients. That's all he was praising them about. He wasn't praising them about those dirty ass conditions, the rats and roaches, maggots and food. He wasn't praising them for that. Okay, so anyway, he says, we continue to be grateful to the faculty staff for allowing access for counsel to Combs to prepare for trial. Without this critical access, Combs would not have been able to prepare his successful defense. However, that does not change the reality of the conditions at the facility for the past 11 months. The government argues that during the defendant's stay at the MDC, the facility has made enormous strides in increasing and stabilizing their staffing, improving medical services, and improving physical conditions. Though MDC initiated these efforts in 2024 after the Chavez decision, any increases in spending were reversed this year due to the federal government's aggressive budget cuts. See, that's why it's still a whole hot mess and a hellhole. For example, since January of 2025, there have been cuts to BOP, Bureau of Prisons, staffing and pay, and decreases pending across the agency, exasperating an already troubled situation. Contrary to the government's contention, living conditions at the MDC remain inhumane, and the conditions seem unlikely to improve due to the aggressive budget cuts. The government's budget cuts. MDC routinely serves food that is expired and infested with maggots. The maggot-infested food captured in that photo is unfortunately not an uncommon experience. Lockdowns also remain common despite the government's claims. For example, the MDC sent a notice to detainees that they would be on lockdown from February 22nd of 2025 to at least March 3rd of 2025 because multiple inmates became disruptive and utilized weapons during an incident. So what are they talking about? It's gotten better, conditions have improved, and Diddy has nothing to worry about or be concerned. I told y'all, the prosecution is a bunch of liars. They straight up be lying. And the judge is naive. The judge is naive because he sits there and listens to their bullshit and clearly doesn't do his own due diligence and go back and review things for himself. That's my opinion. Now, this was just a few months ago. The government argues that the unchecked violence relied upon in Colucci does not serve as a valid basis for finding of exceptional circumstances because this violence occurred over a year ago. Unfortunately, this shows the government's ignorance with respect to inmate violence at the MDC. The government is ignorant. They're liars and they're ignorant, and that's why they lost the case. I just want y'all to pay attention. At the end of the day, I mean, they're smart in some aspects, but in some, they just fall short because what they should have done before they wrote this and drafted it all up, the opposition letter to the defense, they should have actually checked into what's really going on at MDC. Why would you open your mouth and say that things have improved and you don't even go and check? I don't care about what's written in paper. You should go and find out for sure, which is clearly what they didn't do. Clearly what they didn't do. Now, with that all being said, on March the 6th of 2025, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York announced criminal charges against 25 defendants in 12 separate cases relating to violence and contraband smuggling at the MDC. Now, I want y'all to pay attention. This is on March the 6th, just a few short months ago. I do believe this was after the feds showed up, all those multiple agencies. But anyway, let me continue. So, contraband smuggling at the MDC, all of which occurred recently between April of 2024 and the present. These include charges against 15 inmates for violent assaults against smuggled contraband in the facility on January 21st of 2025. I want you all to pay attention because this is why the defense is so much more, what's the word I want to use? Well, they're more intellectual than the prosecution. They're just better at their jobs. Okay, see all this is right here. This is called research. This right here, this is called due diligence. Okay, this is what the prosecution clearly isn't doing. Because if so, they know all of this and they wouldn't have said that foolish stuff they said about, oh, it's getting so much better. The conditions have improved. They have more staff. They didn't even know that there were budget cuts. But anyway, I digress. So they go on to say on January 21st of 2025, an inmate for orchestrating a contraband smuggling operation between April and June of 2024. An inmate for smuggling ceramic scalpels into the facility on October the 12th of 2024. An inmate for possession of contraband and continuing to commit fraud while detained at MDC. And an MS-13 gang associate for attempting to smuggle a large package of contraband, including 18 cell phones and Mary Jane, to other MS-13 gang members incarcerated at the MDC. A whole lot of illegal activity going on within the prison or within the jailhouse walls is what they're saying. Additionally, upon information and belief, just 2 Fridays ago, an inmate in the floor above Combs was stabbed. These aren't extenuating circumstances. I believe they absolutely are. Okay, I'm going to have to go with, yeah, they are. Finally, the government argues that Combs' bail motion is devoid of any claims that the defendant himself was impacted in any way by the conditions he alleges. Once again, this shows the government's ignorance with respect to the situation at MDC. Okay, now this right here is redacted. So the government argues that even if extraordinary circumstances could be demonstrated, Combs fails to establish by clear and convincing evidence that he does not pose a danger to the community or a flight risk. The government is wrong. Combs has shown this court through his behavior in confinement that he does not pose a danger. Let me tell you all something. Let me stop right there. Let me stop right there and tell you all this. Remember the other day when I told you guys that the feds were just lying? Put ones in the chat if you remember me telling you all this. Ones in the chat if you all remember me telling you this. When I told you all the other day that the feds were lying when they said they expected Diddy to get more time. When they said they expected Diddy to get more time. Remember how I told you guys they were lying? Okay, talk to me, I talk back. Say the government is working with feelings, not research. Yes, they're mad because they lost. They're mad because they lost. They don't want to take that L and hold it, but they're going to have to. So now here's the thing. Here's the reason I told you they were lying. Because the bottom line is this. I'm about to expose their strategy. Now I want y'all to listen good because you heard it here first. The reason the government is lying is because there's something called sentencing guidelines, okay, that show you what type of sentence someone should get for whatever type of federal crime. But the judge, however, can use it at his discretion. The judge can give more or less. Remember how the judge gave Shap, the pastor who was convicted of Mann Act violations, he got 144 months. That's 12 years. Under the federal guidelines, it's usually 10 for the Mann Act violations. But that's only when somebody's done something extra nefarious, like I told you, multiple repeat offender or using minors. But here's the thing. Nicole just gifted 5 memberships. Thank you, beloved. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your kind contribution. Peace, love, and blessings. You all shout out Nicole for being so kind and generous and thoughtful. Now, but here's the thing. They're saying that Diddy's going to get more time. No, he's not. And they know he's not. They're lying. But let me tell you why they said that. Well, I already told you, actually. They said that so that they can use that as their excuse for why he's a flight risk. For saying that, oh, because we now think he's going to get more time, this makes him more likely to flee. But here's the kicker to that story. They know damn well they're lying. He's not going to get any more time than they actually already requested. Okay, but here's why they did it. You see, this is a tactic that's commonly used with prosecutors. For example, prosecutors will do things like if someone is facing or if someone is convicted of a crime where, let's say, the window for their sentencing is usually 5 years. Then the prosecutors will come in and say to the judge, well, judge, we'd like you to give them 15 years. Why would they ask for 15 years if the sentence is usually only like 5 years? Well, they do that because the sentence could be less than 5 years. It could be 1 to 5 years. So if they come in and say, well, Your Honor, we want this person to get 15 years. They know that sounds crazy to the judge. Okay, they know that likely sounds crazy to the judge, but they're hoping that if we ask for more, then we'll get what we want. So if we're afraid the judge might just give this person 1 year and we really want them to get 5, we'll just ask for 15 so that the judge will likely give them the 5 that we really want in the first place. That's the trick. I want y'all to pay attention. That's the trick right there. They do this all the time. So that's why I told you all days ago, because I know how this works. I know how this works. Okay, let's not forget I went to college for this stuff and I worked with an attorney for my internship. And this happens all the time. They're just trying to use this tactic so they can make it look like, oh, you know, Your Honor, he's going to be a whole flight risk. Because now he's facing more time possible. We have cases that are going to back this up. That's what that is. But I'm calling their bluff. I'm calling their bluff. And remember, you heard it here first. Now let me continue. So they say that he has not shown through his behavior in confinement that he does not pose a danger. I don't understand why they're saying that, why the Fed said that, because through his confinement. So he's not shown through his confinement that he doesn't pose a danger. Well, I disagree with that because for one, while he's in confinement, he's been having counsel. He's been having counsels come to the jail. According to Mark Agnifilo, when he did that interview days ago, he said that they have counselors come in and speak to him about his drug use and about his violence. So that looks like he's trying to prove that he's not posing a danger. So I don't know why they said that. See, they're just not that smart like the defense is. Moreover, a combination of conditions, PTS monitoring, monitored security, rug testing, approved visitor list, etc., could provide the court with the necessary assurance that absolutely nothing will continue to happen while Combs is pending sentencing. First, despite the conditions of confinement at the MDC, Combs has not gotten into any fights. Didn't I tell y'all that the other day? I said he's not been getting into any trouble while he's there. They've not had to put him in solitary confinement. He's not had to suffer any consequences of his actions or behavior. So why would they say that his behavior in confinement doesn't warrant that he's no longer a danger to society? Because it clearly does. Okay, it clearly does. I told you all this days ago, and now we have the defense saying the same thing verbatim that I already told you. Okay, so now with that all been said, they say at trial, the defense admitted violence in connection with decades-old violence and an incident of assault in which Combs was first attacked repeatedly in June of 2024. Let me tell you all something about that attack. Now, that was the attack on Jane Doe. When Jane Doe, while Diddy was bending over tying his shoe, she knocked his head into a marble counter. I'm going to tell you like this. If somebody knocked my head into a marble counter, there is no telling what I'm going to do to them. There is no telling how I'm going to react. I can't even tell you, but I know it's not going to be good. So I said all that to say this. Jane Doe did that to Diddy after she saw that Cassie video. So you know what that tells me? She provoked him. Now, of course, that doesn't excuse what Diddy did to her, beating her behind, but I'm going to tell you to look at it like this. Diddy is a person who has been addicted to rugs. Diddy has been a person who has been very violent. He has a problem with his temper. He has been a person who has seemingly not been able to control his temper. Is that an addiction? Is violence an addiction? For some people, it is. For some people, violence is an addiction. Some people cannot control their anger. That's why they have to take anger management classes. That's why they have to get extensive counseling and therapy. Because at the end of the day, it is like an addiction. If you're addicted to rugs, you go and get therapy. You try to better yourself. Remember, before Diddy went to jail, he was signed up with the help of Jane Doe herself for a program to help him stop battering women. That's because his violence has been an addiction for him. So here's why I bring all this up. Just follow me because I'm going somewhere with this. With that being said, I want you to think about this. If you know somebody has a propensity towards violence and you've seen them beat the crap out of a woman and you're a woman, you might not want to provoke them because that's no different. That's no different than dangling a crack pipe full of crack in the face of a crack addict. That's no different. If you know somebody has a rug problem and you're sitting there dangling a little baggie of that white stuff in front of their face, you know they're going to be tempted to take it. You know they're 9 times out of 10 probably going to take it. So if you know somebody is addicted to violence, somebody has a propensity for violence, and you've seen and witnessed it with your own eyes because you saw that video, and you choose to put your hands on them, you already know what's going to happen. Now, again, I'm not excusing what Diddy did, but what I'm saying is Diddy has a problem that he couldn't control. He couldn't control his temper any more than a rug addict can control the temptation to do the rugs. Y'all understand what I'm saying here? So when the prosecution brings that episode up, they need to have that in mind, but they're not going to have that in mind. They're not going to have that in mind because they want Diddy to stay behind bars because they're mad because they lost. One box says, Diddy will be a whole changed man. I absolutely agree. He would have to be insane to get out and do the same things that he's been doing. The same things that he's accused of. Okay? Thank you, beloved, for your insight into the topic and your contribution to the channel. Peace, love, and blessings. Now, goes on to say, an incident of assault for which Combs was first attacked repeatedly in June of 2024. She did attack him repeatedly. Not only did she knock his head into that marble counter, didn't she say she was throwing candles at him? But Combs has not participated in any violence for the past 11 months, demonstrating to the court that even in conditions he is currently subjected to, where there is unchecked violence surrounding him, he will not commit assault. He's sober, has been committed to bettering himself with therapy, as established in the trial record, and is committed to doing everything possible to support himself and his family. Second, the government argues that the trial record is replete with evidence of defendants' acts of violence towards others. The witnesses the government called testified in support of racketeering, conspiracy, and ex-trafficking charges, all of which Combs was acquitted. And stunningly, the government is trying to support Combs' detention with its failed evidence that Combs assaulted Brianna Bana Bongalan, who testified that Combs caused her substantial injury in Los Angeles at a time when he was 3,000 miles away. The government troublingly also points to unsworn evidence of non-testifying individuals. They're talking about Gina. To try to keep Combs in custody. It had a 2-month trial where it could have, but chose not to call these witnesses when they would have been subject to cross-examination and their allegations could have been tested. The government should not be able to support its argument with untested accusations, as they did at the pretrial hearing or pretrial bail hearings. For example, it argued that Combs was violent towards Virginia Gina Hunn, with whom the defendant was in a relationship at the same time as Ms. Ventura. Ms. Hunn has written a letter in support of Combs' motion for bond, which is attached as Exhibit A. If any of this was true, the government would have called this individual, but without credible evidence, the court should not consider this to continue to detain Combs. Well, they're right, because here's the thing. No matter what Gina told the feds during the proffer, that shouldn't really matter because she never testified to it in court. So how do they know that she told the truth? They don't know that. The defense was never able to cross-examine her to poke holes in her story, to catch her in lies. So how are they able to use that as a means of keeping this man behind bars and denying him bail? Well, they shouldn't be able to. That's how that goes. Finally, the government argues that Combs brutally attacked Jane in June of 2024 in the context of a freak-off. However, the court will recall that on the evening in June 2024, Jane invited Combs to her home. Yeah, she did. She said she had candles on the table. She had made dinner. She had champagne and all of that. Okay, she had a magnum of champagne and tequila waiting. Unprompted by anything Combs said or did that happened that evening, at one point, Jane smashed Combs' head into the kitchen counter as he was bending over tying his shoes. That was completely unprovoked. That's when I knew that she was crazy. That's when I knew that Diddy had met his match as it pertains to violence, because she snapped for no reason. How do you invite somebody over for a good time, have candlelight dinner and all of that, and then out of nowhere? She then began throwing glasses and burning candles at him, stating she hated him and calling him a PDF file. She explained this by testifying that Combs was dating another woman who was older than 18 but was younger than Jane. She continued throwing glasses at him and believed she got hot candle wax on him. It was in this context that Combs defended himself, and several hours after this, that an entertainment night allegedly occurred. Several hours after this. So she did the freak off after that. He didn't beat her to make her do the freak off. The fight was because of something else. And he was acquitted by the jury. It is disingenuous for the government to claim that this extensive history of violence, the vast majority of which occurred over a decade ago, while Combs was addicted to rugs, means he is unable to show he is not a danger to the community now. I'm glad they brought up that he was addicted to rugs, because that really had a lot to do with his violence, in my opinion. And I'm sure that a psychologist or psychiatrist would likely agree to that, because when people are on rugs, it causes them to act in a whole different manner of which they would normally act. How is it that Combs, who has been in this institution for 11 months, has not been in any fights whatsoever, yet he cannot establish by clear and convincing evidence that he does not pose a danger to the community? Moreover, Combs will submit any conditions the court views as sufficient. In closing on this point, we ask the court to focus on Combs' time in jail. Violent people are violent in jail as well. Well, that is true. They fight with inmates. They challenge prison staff. They sometimes align themselves with violent groups so they can be more violent. If you all remember, I told you all sometime last week when I was talking about this, when they were talking about Diddy hasn't shown that he's no longer violent or he's no longer a threat. I said, now, has he gotten into it with any of the staff at the jail? Has anybody had to chastise him for his behavior? See, the defense is making a good point here, making a very good argument. Now that Sean Combs has been free of violence of every sort, is important to understanding that man that he is today. He has shown nothing but respect for the criminal justice system and everyone in it from his first minute in jail until now. There is no reason to believe he will be violent or threatening to anyone in any manner. Another thing they should have brought up, which they didn't, is how Diddy was motivating the other inmates. Do you all remember when I reported that months ago? They said Diddy was going around motivating the other inmates, trying to keep them in positive spirits. They should have brought that up too, in my opinion. Now, the government cannot seriously argue that Combs is a risk of flight, given his history of flying to New York under circumstances much greater than now, to face his impending federal cases head on. Here's the thing. They absolutely sound stupid trying to portray him as a flight risk when Diddy didn't even try to flee when he was facing a whole life sentence. Okay, I'm going to need them to make that make sense. What do y'all have to say about that? This man was literally facing a life sentence. Okay? He was facing a life sentence. And nonetheless, didn't flee. So why would he flee now? Doesn't make sense. He is and always has been an active participant in his defense and would not make the decision to flee when he has prevailed against the most serious charges against him. When Combs was facing a life sentence, he did everything one man could do to show his desire to come to court. Now that he is facing much less than that, there is no credible reason to believe he would flee. And there is no damn reason. And this is just all a bunch of bull-ish as far as I'm concerned. At the end of the day, if they don't give Diddy a bail, I'm just sorry. The judge is just a whole devout racist, in my opinion. Okay, this is clearly bias because there is no excuse for this man to not get bail. Murderers get bail. Now, in addition, as the court is aware, and they don't put up $50 million like Diddy's willing to do. I want y'all to think about that. In addition, as the court is aware, he is an active, supportive, loving father to 7 children, 4 of whom have spent the last almost 11 months without the presence of either parent. Combs is focused on returning to his life with his children and will not run from his responsibilities to his children or this court. Okay, so what do y'all have to say about that? What do you all have to say about that? Hold on, beloved. Hold on. Okay, so let me just take this off the screen. Listen, the defense is on point. They make some very good arguments. They make some very, very good arguments. Okay? And let me tell you all something. If the judge doesn't grant Diddy bail at this point, I'm sorry, it's just completely given bias. Okay, it's just given bias as far as I'm concerned. Likes up, everyone, please. Like and share. Hold on, you guys. I'm multitasking right now. So what I was going to say is this. Ray Johnson says, the government, by all means, going to try everything in their power to keep Diddy, no matter how well Diddy does. They pick up Diddy a day early before turning himself in. Thank you. That's what I was trying to remember, beloved. That's what I was trying to remember. I'm so glad you said that. I couldn't remember my thought. Okay, that's what I was going to bring up. Yes, Diddy came to New York to turn himself in. He didn't try to flee. He didn't try to run, but they came and arrested him the night before. So somebody who's a flight risk, would they be so willing to just come and turn themselves in? And they're facing a life sentence. Facing a life sentence. If you're willing to turn yourself in, there's no reason for me to think, or anyone to think reasonably, or any reasonable person to think that you're going to flee when you've beat those charges and facing significant less time. And even though, and see, this right here makes the prosecution's entire argument fall short. It makes their entire argument fall short for the simple fact that they're basing keeping him in jail because of violence, which he wasn't convicted of any violence. They're basing keeping him in jail just because they're saying he's a flight risk, but he isn't a flight risk. And they're trying to say that because he can get a significant amount of time than what we previously said, so he might flee. He didn't even flee when he had a life sentence, okay? That's what he didn't do. So I want you all to pay attention to something, because there is a phrase. Remember how I told you guys that a prosecution, the prosecutors can indict a ham sandwich, which basically means they can indict anybody for any reason. They absolutely can. They absolutely can. Because they don't give the defendant the opportunity. They're not standing on equal footing before the grand jury, because they don't get to come in and show evidence. They don't get to have the representation of their counsel or any of that. So it's so easy to get an indictment. It's so easy. But you know what else is easy? Let me tell you all something. it's also easy for this judge to go ahead and give Diddy bail. And if the judge doesn't give Diddy bail, well, here's what I'd have to say. There's also another phrase that's commonly used, and that phrase is amorphous dummy, unspotted by human motions. Okay? That basically means that somebody who just is so foolish and blind that they don't have humanity within them. This was in the 1921 Supreme Court case. I studied this in college. It was a 1921 Supreme Court case, Berger versus the United States. I was looking for my paper that I wrote on this. That's why I was distracted. I told you guys I was multitasking because I was looking for my paper where I typed this up. I still have so many of my college papers. But anyway, now here's the thing. It suggests that while a judge should not be swayed by bias or undue emotion, they should also not be devoid of human understanding as to be completely detached and unable to grasp the nuances of the situation. The context of this quote in a case referring to a judge, it referred to a judge who was challenged due to perceived prejudice against a particular group, i.e. Black people. The quote argues that an intense dislike to a class doesn't necessarily render a judge incapable of delivering justice to a member of that class, that they absolutely should still be able to do so. But some of these judges won't and don't because they are amorphous dummies, because they don't have humanity within them. And so if they don't like you because you're a Black person, because you're a Latina person, because you're somebody who doesn't look like them, let's just say, then maybe they won't show you any humanity. Maybe they won't have any ability to understand or even care because they're detached and unable to grasp the nuances of your situation. So I said all that to say this. If the judge doesn't give Diddy bail, he's an amorphous dummy. Okay, I want y'all to pay attention. All right, I want y'all to pay attention. Now, with that all being said, let's continue. Likes up, everyone, please. Like and share. Thank you in advance. So the next point of business, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it because Trump, hold on, let me make sure this all the Diddy stuff I wanted to tell you all. Oh, no. Let me share this on the screen also before I get into Charlemagne the Devil and Trump. I looked up another one of the cases that the prosecution brought to the forefront and in their opposition letter or motion, and it was the case of United States versus Scally in 2018. Now let's talk about this because this person was accused of violating the Mann Act as well. And they weren't granted bond or they weren't granted bail. Let's see if this is the same as Diddy's. Defendant appellant Joseph Scally appeals for judgment from the district court, denying his motion for release pending sentencing. The district court found that Scally had failed to prove by clear and convincing evidence as required under the Bail Reform Act that he was not a flight risk. We review for clear error both the district court's predicate factual findings and its ultimate determination as to whether a defendant poses a risk of flight or a danger to the community. We assume the parties' familiarity with the underlying facts, the procedural history of the case, and the issues on appeal. That's another thing I want you all to pay attention because there was two cases that the prosecution used and referenced as it pertains to Diddy's cases, but these really don't apply because they're appellate cases. These are people going for appeals. Now, having been found guilty of multiple felonies, Scally no longer has a substantive constitutional right to bail pending sentencing. He bears the burden of proving by clear and convincing evidence that he is not likely to flee or pose danger to the safety of any other person or the community if released. We will reverse the district court's decision only if left with a definite and firm conviction that a mistake has been committed. Now, the district court did not err in finding that Scally had failed to meet his heavy burden to rebut by clear and convincing evidence the presumption in favor of detention pending sentencing. The court reasonably determined that Scali's guideline range, 87 to 108 months imprisonment, was significant enough to provide an incentive to flee. See, that's what the prosecution's talking about. They're trying to say that Diddy's time that he's facing is, in fact, an incentive for him to flee. But like I told you all, it absolutely isn't. They're full of crap, and I'm calling their bluff. It also properly considered that Scali is in his late 60s and has a number of health issues, and that therefore his potential sentence could take up to most of the rest of his life. Additionally, the court reasonably found that Scali's perjury conviction makes it difficult to trust his promise that he will not flee. These factors are more sufficient to sustain the district court's judgment. We considered all of the appellant's contentions on appeal and have found in them no basis for reversal. For the reasons stated herein, the judgment of the district court is hold on, beloveds. Hold on, I'm having technical difficulties. Okay, they say, where was I? Okay, these factors are more than sufficient to sustain the district court's judgment. We have considered all of the appellant's contentions on appeal and have found in them no basis for reversal. For the reasons stated herein, the judgment for the district court is affirmed. Okay? So that's the case they referenced. And that's not the same as Diddy's, like I said. That was an appellate case. Diddy's is not. So it looks and sounds to me like the government can't find any cases really that are suitable to compare to Diddy's. And that's why they're pulling out all the stops. That's why they're pulling out all the stops, because they're desperate at this point. It is not Diddy that's desperate, it's the government. They're desperate, okay? Please pay attention. So their next move is likely going to be to bring up what Gina Hun told them during the proffer and try to use that as another means of keeping Diddy behind bars and him being denied bail, and then basically say that, hey, either she was lying then or she's lying now. And if she was lying then, well, they might just want to come after her with a vendetta because she didn't testify for them. Okay, because that absolutely is a crime if you lie to the feds. But the question is, will they be able to prove that she lied? All right. So anyway, with that all being said, let's talk about Charlemagne, the devil, and Trump. First, I'm going to go to the video. Charlemagne, the devil, was on Fox News. And he said some things about Trump, which of course Trump didn't like, and we know how petty he is. Okay. So let's get into it. Likes up, everyone, please. Like and share. Thank you in advance.
So as it turns out, when you build your entire show around sneering at half the country, audiences eventually tune out. Just ask the Late Show host, Stephen Colbert. And then there's The View, where diversity somehow means only inviting left-wing guests. It begs the question, is there still appetite for civil discourse and apolitical entertainment? Or has the liberal echo chamber become the norm? Well, Charlemagne certainly has some thoughts. Well, I give you a lot of credit because you have had me on your show. You have people with differing viewpoints on a lot of different things on your show. And Charlemagne, I think we need more of that.
Absolutely.
You know, you look, though, at things like, take a look at these numbers. This is The View. The View had, since January, from January until June, or July, look at that, 0 conservatives and 102 left-leaning guests. And then listen to—
Is that real?
That's real. And this is ABC News. And listen to what ex-reporter Terry Moran had to say. He said—
Let me pause there for a second and read a couple of these comments. Ray Johnson says, in Angola prison, inmates taking care of sick inmates with cancer and everything else, young and super old, that's bedridden. Yeah, that's really sad. And that just goes to prove that these prisons do not have, these jails don't either, they don't have adequate medical attention for these inmates. Okay? That's what they don't have. Nicole says addicts need rehabilitation. Being locked up will make them worse without proper treatment. Yeah, they do need rehabilitation, beloved. You're absolutely right. Now, Cincy Prophetic Bastard said, Pac was locked up for grape, but I don't believe it. Ladies were all over Pac. He didn't have to grape them. With that all being said, yeah, you're absolutely right. Or he didn't have to chase them. I think she was offended because he didn't pay attention to her. Yeah, that's absolutely what it was. And here's the thing. He wasn't even locked up for grape. Okay, that's just what they put out there in the media. That's what they put out there in the media, beloved. He was in jail, prison for forceful groping. It was called forceful groping. Okay, it wasn't grape. They lied and said it was. Okay, they lied and said it was. It wasn't grape. It was forceful groping. That's what they said. And if that's the case, they should have locked Trump up. In my opinion, didn't he say grab him in the ussy? Maybe he did grab him in it.
But we were biased. Yes, almost inadvertently, I'd say ABC News has the same problem so many leading cultural institutions do in America, a lack of viewpoint diversity. It's no secret there are hardly any people who supported Donald Trump at ABC News or other corporate legacy mainstream news networks. How important do you think it is to have different viewpoints and allow people, I mean, you're here on my show, I appreciate that, and vice versa, you had me on yours. This is important.
I think it's very important because I think a lot of times people talk about folks they never talk to.
Yeah.
And if you think that a person is spreading misinformation, if you think that a person is lying, then, you know, bring them on your platform and have that conversation. Like, you know, present the facts, present the truth, and then let the people decide. I think that's ridiculous to never, ever have anybody on your show that you don't agree with or has an opposing view of you or is from a different political party. Because at the end of the day, man, regardless of who's in the White House, that person represents all of America.
Amen.
And I reserve the right to criticize both parties.
Well, and I would say that person is a representative of America, and we should all want that person to succeed for America, right? No matter your political viewpoints, right?
100% agree. Like when you ask me, what do I think President Trump has done over the last 6 months? I don't want to say that I think he did a terrible job, but if he's doing a terrible job, I got to call it like it is. And if it was a Democrat,
I will respectfully disagree with you on that.
Understand,
but that's okay. You can have your viewpoint.
But if it was I gave President Biden the same hell too, because I didn't think he was doing a good job. All we want is somebody in those positions that's going to do a good job. I'm not a party person in no way, shape, or form. I want to say I'm an independent, but that don't make no sense because there's only two parties in this country, right? So you're going to end up voting for one of them.
Yeah. Do you see yourself in 2028 voting blue or voting red? And is there anyone you might already see yourself supporting?
I really don't know. I mean, I think that there's some good candidates out there. I think that we really have to look to the governors when it comes to the Democrats. I don't think that there's any change agents that's going to come out of nowhere and shake things up in the Democratic Party. I think it's going to end up being a governor, Josh Shapiro or a Wes Moore, somebody like that. And they actually have a track record, right? Because you can go look at their states to see what they're probably going to end up doing on a national level. The only other person I would like to see in 2028 run, and this is going to sound ridiculous probably coming from me, I would love to see Jon Stewart run in 2028. If we're talking about a change agent coming from the outside that's really going to shake things up and somebody that I feel like can speak to, all people. Plus he's a celebrity who actually knows what they're talking about. We've seen him get legislation and stuff, passed before. Like, we know where his heart is. He'd be somebody I'd like to see really get in the race and disrupt things in 2028. Maybe a Jon Stewart Colbert ticket because Colbert's not going to have a job. He's not working because of President Trump, so they say.
Well, people say different things. They also say he lost $40 million a year for CBS, which is also a bit of a problem whenever you're trying to have a successful show. If you had to pick a Republican who might be able to earn your vote, is there anyone you like that you would look at?
I mean, I was in South Carolina. I grew up in South Carolina under, somebody like Nikki Haley, right? So I can see something like that. I do think, and this is I think that traditional conservatives are going to take the Republican Party back. I think there's a political coup going on.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there because I've heard enough. I've heard enough from Charlemagne the Devil. Now let's talk about what Trump had to say. Trump slams Charlemagne the Devil as racist sleazebag for Fox News interview predicting a political coup in the Republican Party. Donald Trump took aim at Charlemagne the Devil on Truth Social Sunday after the Breakfast Club co-host appeared on Laura Trump's Fox News program, My View. Okay, discussing the shifting powers of the GOP amid the Trump Jeffrey Epstein scandal. So here's what Trump had to say. The very wonderful and talented Laura Trump, whose show has big ratings, has a big rating success, put racist sleazebag Charlemagne the Devil on her show. That's me calling him Charlemagne the Devil. I refuse to call him anything other than that. Why is he allowed to use the word God when describing himself? Can anyone imagine the uproar there would be if I used that nickname? Y'all hear that? Trump said, can y'all imagine the uproar there would be if he used that nickname? Can you imagine? Can you imagine Trump the God? Yeah, that would be an uproar. Trump, please sit down because you're the devil too, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, I digress. The post was followed by a response from Charlemagne on Instagram Sunday, along with a photo of Trump's post. He also shared an excerpt from The Daily Show, along with a clip of his My View experience. And here's what he had to say. President Trump was better off going after Urkel, because he's really scraping the bottom of the black barrel coming at me. You can't go from MLK Jr., President Obama, Oprah, Beyonce to a sleazebag named Leonard. Because y'all know Charlemagne's real name is Leonard McKelvey. This is all so hilarious. I'm going to read you Trump's entire post on Truth Social. Trump is so ridiculous. Hold on. Somebody says they don't Diddy or his tape snitching on celebs. I'm not sure. I think you have a typo. What are you saying? Do they have tapes of Diddy snitching? Diddy hasn't snitched on anybody. Diddy hasn't snitched on anyone, beloved. And DJ Big Six said that Trump is the one who's the racist sleazebag. Okay, I have to agree. D Major Scaler says Trump literally has an AI pic of him as the Pope. Yes, you are so right. I shared that on my X account. I forgot all about that, right? He needs to sit down somewhere. Okay, thank you for your insight into the topic, beloved, and your contribution to the channel. Peace, love, and blessings, honey. This is all crazy. GW says they don't ever want Diddy or his tape snitching on celebs. Okay, so anyway, let's go to I'm going to read Trump's entire post. So here's what it says. The very wonderful and talented Laura Trump, whose show is a big rating success, put racist sleazebag Charlemagne the Devil. Why is he allowed to use the word God when describing himself? Can anyone imagine the uproar there would be if I used that nickname? He's a low IQ and has no idea what words are coming out of his mouth and knows nothing about me or what I have done. Like just ending 5 wars, including a 31-year bloodbath between Republic of Congo and Rwanda. Trump, please stop lying. Do y'all hear this? Taking credit for saving Africa. He said he stopped a 5-year bloodbath. I mean, a 31-year bloodbath between the Republic of Congo and Rwanda. Trump, please sit down. Where 7 million people have died, and there was no end in sight. He didn't know that, or India and Pakistan, or wiping out Iran's nuclear capabilities, or closing the horrendous open border, or creating the greatest economy where prices and inflation have come way down, and where stupid and corrupt Joe Biden set the record for being the worst job for doing the worst job as president ever. But this dope Charlemagne would vote for Sleepy Joe or Kamala? Remember, 1 year ago, our country was dead. Now it's the hottest country anywhere in the world. MAGA. Y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? Trump, please sit down somewhere at this point. Okay, you know how they say a lie doesn't care who tells it? Well, that's Trump. He's the lie. Okay, I want y'all to pay attention. Now, during his interview on My View, Charlemagne said that traditional conservatives are going to take the Republican Party back from the MAGA base, with Trump's alleged connection to convicted ex-offender Epstein as in their way. Okay, he says, I think there's a political, you know what? Maybe I should have listened to that whole thing because I wanted to hear that. Hold on, let me see if I can pull that back up. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. Let's go back to that because we didn't hear that part, did we? Yeah, we didn't.
Did you know?
I'm going to forward. We're about at the 5-minute mark, I think, or somewhere around here.
Josh Shapiro or a Wes Moore, somebody like that. And they actually have a track record, right? Because you can go look at their states to see what they're probably going to end up doing on a national level. The only other person I would like to see in 2028 run, and this is going to sound ridiculous probably coming from me, I would love to see Jon Stewart run in 2028. If we're talking about like a change agent coming from the outside that's really going to shake things up, and somebody that I feel like can speak to, you know, all people. Plus he's a celebrity who actually knows what they're talking about. We've seen him get legislation and stuff, you know, passed before. Like, we know where his heart is. He'd be somebody I'd like to see really get in the race and disrupt things in 2028. You know, well, maybe a Jon Stewart Colbert ticket, because, you know, Colbert's not going to have a job. He's not working because of President Trump, so they say.
Well, people say different things. They also say he lost $40 million a year for CBS, which is also a bit of a problem whenever you're trying to have a successful show. If you had to pick a Republican who might be able to earn your vote, is there anyone you like that you would look at?
I mean, I was in South Carolina. I grew up in South Carolina under, you know, somebody like Nikki Haley, right? So I can see something like that. I do think, and this is I think that traditional conservatives are going to take the Republican Party back. I think there's a political coup going on right now in the Republican Party that people aren't paying attention to.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think that this Epstein thing is going to be a way for traditional conservatives to take their party back. I really do. I think that they know this is the issue that has gotten the base riled up. The MAGA base isn't letting this issue go. And for the first time, they know they can, you know, probably take their party back and not piss off the MAGA base. I think they're going to do that.
Well, I would say, you know, we've never seen a typical election since the day that Donald Trump came down the golden escalator. So I don't know that we'll ever see another typical kind of traditional election with traditional Republicans. I don't know. I feel like things have changed, the game changed, and to say that the old guard is going to kind of come back, that's a lot. That's a big statement.
But that's the mistake Republicans are going to make. Republicans are going to make the same mistake that Democrats made. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Barack Obama was a one-of-one, once-in-a-lifetime, you know, political juggernaut. And since Barack Obama, every Democrat has tried to be Barack Obama. You're not Barack Obama.
You got to be yourself.
It's going to be the same thing with Republicans. Say what you want. Donald Trump is a once-in-a-lifetime, one-on-one political juggernaut. You're not going to be Donald Trump. So if you think you're going to be able to do what Donald Trump has done, talk the way Donald Trump has talked, get away with what Donald Trump has got away with, it's not going to happen. So everybody right now, we have the opportunity to have like a huge reset. I think you should blow it all up. I think that people are really sick and tired of what we've been presented from both parties. By the way, we knew this before the last election. They were telling us that like 70% of people did not want to see a rematch between Trump or Biden. So it's just like, we know we want something different. Everybody wants something different. So I think that if Democrats keep doing the same old thing, they're going to keep getting the same results. And if Republicans, think that they can repeat what has been done and don't try to give the people something new, they're going to get the results they don't want.
Well, just to wrap up here, and I appreciate our whole conversation. You on your show have a lot of young viewers. You're very influential, I think, with a lot of people. What would be your message to this next generation of voters? Because they're going to play a very pivotal role coming up in these midterms and coming up in 2028. What's your message?
Let's stop listening to the catchy slogans. Let's stop putting on jerseys for different parties, and let's just focus on the people who are putting the ideas out there that truly are going to put more money in your pocket and truly are going to make you feel safe in this country. Like, who is the forward-thinking people that are talking about, making this country more affordable, who are talking about really making you as an individual smarter, telling you what sectors to get into the world to make, this country better. Listen to people's ideas. Like, we focus too much on individuals. We focus too much on identity. We focus too much on party. What are people's ideas? Because that is what is going to always win.
All right. Well, Charlemagne, we appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for sitting down with me, and I hope we'll see you back here soon.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you all heard that. Now, there is no reason for Trump, even though I don't care for Charlemagne the devil, there was no need for Trump to call that man a racist sleaze bag. Okay? Charlemagne's never said anything racist. Trump the dump. But let me tell you all something. I have some news, because y'all know I be fact checking, right? How about Trump was not lying? I called Trump a lie, and he is not a liar, alas. I'm going to have to show you all, honey, because I had to look it up while Charlemagne was talking. That's another reason why I let you all listen to the whole thing, because I was trying to fact check real quick. I'm like, is Trump lying? Because I don't know anything about this. Okay, hold on. Hold on. Let me just pull this back up real quick. Because who knew? Oh, this is all so interesting, honey. How did I miss this bit of news? I'm going to share my screen. Now, I'm going to read this to you guys. Excuse me, because this is what I typed in. I said, did Trump stop the conflict between the Republic of Congo and Rwanda? It says, Donald Trump's administration has played a role in mediating the conflict between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. The foreign ministers of both countries signed a U.S. brokered peace agreement in Washington on June the 27th of 2025. Now, how did I miss that? Well, I missed it because I was focused on Diddy, because I was down there at that trial in New York, or up there at that trial in New York. Okay, so I clearly missed this. The agreement aims to end the fighting that has raged in the Eastern DRC for decades, killing thousands and misplacing millions. Yeah, it has gone on for decades, and he's right. It has been exactly about 31 years, because it started, if memory serves me correct, around 1994. Okay, so Trump didn't lie that time. But it's the fact that he lies so very often, pathologically, in fact, this is why I didn't believe him, even when he was telling the truth. Do y'all hear that? Can y'all believe it? Trump actually helped to broker the peace deal between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda? I literally am flabbergasted. How about y'all? Is anybody else flabbergasted, or is it just me? This is all crazy. D. Major Skellen says this does not excuse all the other horrible things he's done. Honey, of course it doesn't. I'm just saying that I'm mad at myself that I didn't even know that, because I try to stay up on all things that Trump is doing. There's probably some other sneaky ish that he's done that I haven't found out either, since I missed that little tidbit. Okay, so I'm gonna have to go back and do more due diligence. Donald Trump, what are you up to? Miss Mississippi said, unbelievable. Okay, it absolutely is for me. D. Major Skellen said, I suppose he wants a Nobel Peace Prize. Okay. Aaron Spears said, I knew that, Queen. Well, when you knew it, beloved, when I said he was lying, you should have called me out. Okay. Don't y'all be scared to tell me when I'm wrong, honey. Put it in the chat. Okay. I'm not a narcissist. I can always take constructive criticism. Okay. Please pay attention. It's those narcissistic YouTubers and content creators who get upset when you correct them. All right. Then they want to block you and all that. That's not me, honey. Don't have me up here looking crazy. If I say the wrong thing, honey, let me know in the chat. Okay. But it's a good thing I fact checked it because I did not know that. Okay, Trump. Well, you did one thing good, you low down dirty devil. All right. You low down dirty devil. I still ain't voting for your arse if you run again. Okay. So anyway, that all being said. It's one more thing I want to tell you guys before I close out the broadcast. Okay. Absolute says that deal was the video of him calling that African reporter pretty. Oh, I bet he did. The oh my God, it said he probably threatened to take both nations. LOL. Hold on. Miss Sheila said the Prime Minister of Israel has already nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize. I know you're lying. Say what now? Hold on. Really? Well, I'm not surprised that Israel's prime minister would nominate him for something. But yeah, he definitely does. The last thing Trump needs, in my opinion, is a Nobel Peace Prize. Oh. Okay, so etc. says that happened during the second trip from African leaders. Trump just wants the minerals. We know he does. Okay, that's all the U.S. wants, honey. They're not trying to really help Africa. They just want, you're absolutely right, those minerals. Okay, so let me just tell you all this before I roll out of here. This is what I want you all to pay attention to. Okay, I have long told you guys, even for Diddy's trial or any of that stuff. Also, just to pat myself on the back again, I told you all in 2021. Okay, y'all remember, me and Odd Negroes officials said that Cassie was going to expose Diddy, and that's exactly what happened. I knew she was plotting. Okay, I knew she was plotting. Now, D. Major Scallon says, did you hear Democrats fled Texas to stop the vote? What? No, I didn't hear that, but thanks for the update. I will definitely look into it, beloved. We'll talk about it on the next live because I'm coming back at about 6 o'clock, so you all stay tuned, okay? And thank you for that insight, beloved, and thank you for your contribution to the channel. Peace, love, and blessings. Okay, with that all being said, hold on. Cool Kitty says, I appreciate your correcting your statement. Not a lot of content creators will correct their statements. Hats off to you. Great coverage. Thank you, beloved. I appreciate you. Yeah, you see, I don't want to be out here painting false narratives or giving you all the wrong information. So I try to always make sure, beloved, that I do my due diligence. Okay? Now, with that all being said, let me just tell you all this before I go out of here. You see, I want you to remember that I've told you all a myriad of times how whenever there is something pertaining to an sex crime, and there is a person who doesn't look like me that's out there, specifically a famous person, a celebrity, okay, somebody widely known. When there is somebody like that out there in the forefront of an sex crime, they always want to come and put a face like Diddy's in front of it. So let's talk about how I did a timeline. I literally showed you all a timeline. I did a whole video, okay, about R. Kelly and Harvey Weinstein. How Harvey Weinstein, when he was called out for filth by the Me Too movement, then they went back and got R. Kelly, which they already knew what R. Kelly was up to since the 90s and never bothered to do anything about it. But they had to make him the spectacle so that Harvey Weinstein could sit back in the shadows. And it worked, because as soon as R. Kelly's charges came out, nobody was really talking about Weinstein. For some reason, it's always more salacious and juicy and nefarious when a Black man is the focal point. Okay? So I want you all to remember that. And then when Diddy was on trial, they had Harvey Weinstein right across the street for his retrial. Nobody was focused on that. Okay? Nobody was focused on that. Now, you think it was a coincidence that they put his retrial at the same time Diddy was on trial? Of course it wasn't a coincidence. They did that on purpose. So Diddy could be used as a smokescreen because everybody's talking about Diddy. So nobody's going to be paying attention to Weinstein. And then, with a renewed interest in Epstein and the potential for Ghislaine Maxwell receiving a pardon from Trump, what did Trump do? Trump comes out and teases that he may give Diddy a pardon, that he's considering it. And that was to take the focus off of Epstein, the whole case with Epstein in the list, and Ghislaine Maxwell's potential pardon, even though they snuck her in the dark of night to a whole nother prison, much more cushy. So I just want you all to pay attention. I said all that to say that they always put somebody like Diddy or R. Kelly in the forefront. They use them as shields to protect the people who don't look, or shall I say the men charged with sex crimes who don't look like them. And the last thing I'll say is this. This is nothing new. They've always been doing it. Back in 1913, here in the United States, in Atlanta, Georgia, downtown on Peachtree Street, there lived a man who was a part of the Orthodox community, and his name was Leo Frank. And Leo Frank owned a factory. And in that factory, there worked a 13-year-old little white girl by the name of Mary Fagan. And Mary Fagan went on a Saturday to pick up her check from that factory from Mr. Leo Frank. When she went to pick up her check, she never came home. Her body was found afterwards, and she was dead and had been raped. And who do you think did it? Who do you think did it? I want you all to pay attention, because it was Mr. Leo Frank that did it. But because of who he was and how he looks, they had to paint a different narrative. So let me explain further. Leo Frank, after he was found to have done these things to Mary Fagan, and he was taken and put in the Milledgeville jail, okay? He was taken to the Milledgeville jail in Georgia. A mob of white men came and snatched him up out of there in the dark of night, and they took him right downtown to Peachtree Street, where he had supposedly murdered little Mary Fagan. And they lynched him. They hung him from a tree. Now, with that all being said, people like Leo Frank were then ostracized by some accounts. Nasty things were said about them. So what happened? There was a movie that came out in 1915. It's called Birth of a Nation, a silent film where they depicted a Caucasian man wearing blackface who portrayed a black man who had a lust for white women. They portrayed that man chasing and hunting this white woman so that he could rape her. Okay? And after that movie came out, you know what happened? Well, the tides turned. They were no longer talking about people like Leo Frank. They were talking about black men. Now black men are brutes. Now black men are nefarious. Now they're sexual predators. They want to come after these white women and do vile things to them. Isn't that the same exact year, as a matter of fact, 1913, with the case of Leo Frank? Hold on, let me fact check myself real quick. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. He was lynched on August the 17th of 1915. 1915. The same year that movie came out, but he was arrested April the 29th of 1913. I want you all to pay attention. I want you all to pay attention. So with that all being said, the tides turned. You see, they used a black man in that movie. Even though the movie was complete fiction, there was no truth to it. But they used that movie to paint the narrative, to push the narrative that you don't need to look over here at them, people like Harvey Weinstein and Epstein. You need to look over here at people like Diddy and R. Kelly That's who y'all need to be watching. Okay? That's who y'all need to be watching. See, they've been doing this. They've been doing it. It's nothing new. So there's no surprise that they're doing all this stuff to keep Diddy in jail. Because the bottom line is, if Diddy gets out and Diddy's released October the 3rd with time served, and he's not further sentenced, there's nothing else to say about Diddy. There's no more videos to be made. There's no more news media to be put out there. There's no more stories to tell. There's no more court paperwork to read. It's a wrap. Okay? So you might see why certain people want to keep Diddy locked up. Why they want to keep Diddy locked up, and they're hoping that Diddy gets all this time. See, if Diddy gets a whole lot of time, he's not going to get a whole lot of time. Let me just say that. I already told you all, Diddy's getting 0 to 31 months max. Remember, I told you that. Okay. But the bottom line is, there's some people who want Diddy to, be stuck in jail, to not get bail, so they can keep writing stories about it. Okay. So they can keep telling lies. They can keep making up stuff and embellishing the facts and just blatantly making up things out of the thin air. They're hoping that Diddy gets a lot of time because they're upset because Diddy didn't get what they thought he should get when he beat those other 3 convictions. Okay? So, I'm just going to leave you all with that. I just want you all to pay attention. At the end of the day, I do believe, I'm not sure if Diddy's getting bail or not, but I don't think Diddy's going to get a harsh sentence. There's no logical reason or explanation, no rhyme or reason for the judge to give Diddy a hefty sentence, no matter what the feds are saying. They need to take their L and hold it. Because quite frankly, the defense did a much better job. And that's just what it is. And also because Diddy didn't do what they claimed that he did. I told you all that they were overreaching. I told you all, okay, that they over-prosecuted him. And that's exactly what they did. So that's why the charges didn't stick. Okay, anyway, with that all being said, Michael says there is a great chance he could beat 2 charges. He was convicted on appeal. No, Diddy wasn't convicted on appeal. Diddy wasn't convicted on appeal, beloved. Now, the thing is, they've already requested that either the judge acquit Diddy of those, drop those convictions, or give him a retrial, acquittal or retrial. That's what they're asking. And you may think that they're just using that, saying that so they can use it again on appeal, or use it when they, go for an appeal if they have to. But yeah, that's one reason they're doing it. But also, they feel like that's what the judge should absolutely do. Okay. Oh, Michael says he could beat the charges on appeal, Queen. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Here's the thing. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, if Diddy appeals if he has to appeal those charges, he's absolutely going to win. Remember, I told you that. If he has to appeal, he's absolutely going to beat the charges because there's so much evidence that the defense has collected. Okay. There's so many motions and different things that they filed that are going to absolutely help his appeal. I just want you all to pay attention to that. That's absolutely the case. And one of the main things is that, in fact, if Diddy doesn't get bail or he gets a harsh sentence, the defense will be able to use that to prove or say that the judge was biased, racially biased. Okay? They can absolutely use that because here's why. Because there's no other cases that they can bring up with a person under Diddy's circumstances who did not receive a bail, okay, for Mann Act violations. And Diddy's similar situation. All right, I want you all to pay attention. And in the cases where Johns were actually prosecuted, because Diddy was a John. So in the cases where Johns were prosecuted and convicted and actually served prison time, it's because those Johns were former police officers, former judges. Okay? Former pastors. These were supposed to be upstanding citizens who used their power, their authority, and used their, what's the word I'm looking for? They used their position, their titles to do the things that they did. Okay? And so anyway, with that I've been said, I'm out of here. Listen, you all keep your notifications on because I will be back. I will be back. EZQ says they persecuted him, not prosecuted him. Absolutely, beloved. I agree. Very good point. Okay. Very good point. Okay. So everyone enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. Each one teach one. That's how we grow and thrive. Do something productive, constructive, but never destructive. And always remember, beloveds, to keep the Most High first in your lives.
Gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you're done. They show no love for the queen. Why you hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans? I got dreams like King Luther, shed blood like Kunta. You ain't helping my people, I ain't got nothing to say to ya. I want all the smoke like hookah. Talking reparations, America won't be great until they give us compensation. I'm like, I'm the hottest right now.
That's
See
right.
a bunch of lames out here trying to jock on my style. They be doing too much. I'm the queen, it's too easy. It's like they all at Popeyes, how they be talking so greasy.
Real slick.
I just sit back and laugh while these haters get madder. So nefarious how they don't want my pockets with cheddar. I tell them they can do better. These snakes in the grass can leave a bite on your ass, cause y'all be trusting too fast. I got my foot on the gas, other one on they necks. Dropping receipts on haters, you better show some respect. I'm never facing regrets, we only facing the threats. Running through every challenge like a relay, break no sweat. It's a cold game, so I got that blanket with me. Now that my people awaken, ain't no going to sleep. I do not play by my piece, this time I'm playing for keeps. You talking slick, but when I see you like them ends, we gon' meet. And I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen. Why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen. Why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got